The sun had barely peaked above the distant hilltops, casting long shadows over the bustling ant colony. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of dew-covered grass. Worker ants scurried to and fro, their tiny bodies a blur of industrious activity as they gathered food and tended to the young. It was another day in the relentless march of their never-ending cycle of life. Without warning, the ground began to tremble. The ants paused in their labors, antennae quivering as they tried to discern the source of the disturbance. The tremors grew stronger, the earth beneath them heaving as if alive. Then, with a sickening lurch, the nightmare emerged. A monstrous worm, its body thick as a tree trunk, and as long as the eye could see, erupted from the soil. Its pink, slimy flesh glistened in the early light, and it bore down on the ant city with a hunger that could only be described as insatiable. The ants, so disciplined and orderly just moments before, were now thrown into chaos. The worm's maw, lined with countless tiny teeth, snapped open and shut as it approached, the sound echoing through the air. This was the day the great empire of ants versus empire of worms war had started. The ants had known about the worms, their subterranean neighbors, for millennia. They had learned to coexist, to share the vast underground world that was their home. But this morning, as the sun began to warm the earth, the ants had realized that the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The worms had grown restless, hungry for more than just the simple sustenance of soil and plant roots. They had become monstrous, a force to be reckoned with. The worms had felt the hunger growing within them, a hunger not for food but for territory. The ants had been expanding their colonies at an alarming rate, consuming resources that the worms had once considered their own. Their tunnels grew closer and closer to the worms' lairs, and the constant buzz of ant activity had become a never-ending irritant. The worms had watched from the shadows of the earth as the ants built towering structures of sand and stone, their numbers swelling to the point where the very ground seemed to pulse with their collective life force. It was clear to the worms that they could no longer ignore this encroachment. The Emperor Worm, a creature of immense size and ancient wisdom, had called forth his generals to plan a retaliation. They had studied the ants' tactics, their unyielding determination, and their unrivaled ability to work together as one. The worms knew that to fight such a foe, they would need to be more than just brute strength. They would need to be clever, to outthink the ants and exploit their weaknesses. And so they had surprise attacked the great ant border city of Anthoria, the first line of defense in the sprawling empire of ants. The city's walls, tall and proud, had crumbled under the relentless pressure of the worm's monstrous forms. Hundreds of thousands ant soldiers had thrown themselves at the worm invaders, their tiny jaws and stingers biting and poking the seemingly impenetrable flesh of the worms. Thousands sacrificing their lives to take down even a single worm. Yet, for every worm that fell, 3 more took its place, driven by the Emperor Worm's command to reclaim their lost lands. The battlefield was a tapestry of ant carcasses and writhing worms, the air thick with the acrid scent of blood and the cries of the dying. Each worm that emerged from the earth brought with it a wake of destruction, leaving a trail of pulverized anthills and crushed tunnels in its path. The ants had never seen such horror, their once ordered world descending into chaos. The ground beneath them seemed to be an enemy in itself, as if it were giving birth to a never-ending nightmare. That was nearly 3 months ago. Today was the day the Empire of Ants finally struck back.